Our next presenter is Bob Bachman. He refers to him as the likable engineer. He has been in Toastmasters for about 6 years with the Alice Chalmers number 189. He has been a presenter at the past evaluation universities and has many times been on both sides of the fence as both an evaluator and one being evaluated. So he comes here tonight with a keen understanding of the key components of what makes a great evaluation. So please welcome Robert as he presents Speech Evaluations, How to Create That Nourishing Sandwich. Bob.
A number of years ago, I was at a training session at Caterpillar down in Lafayette, and I happened to sit next to the VP of corporate training at lunchtime. And we talked about, I made the comment about the quality of the speakers that were in the training program. And she quickly said they were having a hard time finding good speakers. And I quickly chimed in that good speakers are not found, they're created. And they're created based on the evaluation technique that we're going to talk about tonight. And I talked about how the sandwich technique works and how we use that in Toastmasters to help us grow as competent communicators and beyond. Thanks, Don, for that introduction. Welcome, everybody, to another evaluation in university. At Toastmasters, how we script evaluations does a great deal to help motivate ourselves, grow ourselves as speakers, and just help us to become better presenters. And in Toastmasters, we use a technique called the sandwich technique. We're going to talk about how to structure your evaluation so you as the evaluator can provide the best value to that person that you're evaluating, provide them with a sense of successful accomplishment, as well as giving them some takeaways that they can use to get better for the next time. Quite simply, the sandwich technique has 3 parts, and really works like this. You start by providing positive comments on how they did relating to the objectives of the speech module. You then follow it up with 1 or 2 areas where they can make improvement. And if you follow the traditional method of Toastmasters, you follow it up with positive reinforcements at the end. But I like to do things with a little bit different twist. I close with trying to find 1 or 2 very specific things that they can do for next time. Because quite frankly, as human beings, we remember the first thing that gets said and the last thing that gets said. And we do this all while using what I call the 3 Ps of good professional evaluation: being personal, positive, and proactive. Let's talk about the personal part for just a second. It comes from that basic Toastmaster premise, know your audience. Do you know that when you're doing the evaluation, it's really one of the few times in Toastmasters where you're really talking to an audience of 1? You're talking to that person that you're evaluating. And the best evaluations are done up here in the speaking space where you are face-to-face with the person you're evaluating. Yes, you're in front of a club, but you're talking to an audience of 1. The rest of the club is really just eavesdropping on that conversation to see what they can pick up. So, know your audience. Is this the first, the 100th, the 10th speech that this person's given? Could be. What I try to do when I evaluate people is if there are a couple of things that they need to work on, I try to bring up the easiest one that they can work on, because you want them to stay motivated. Are there specific things that that speaker has asked you to address in their speech or listen for? You know, to remember and speak to the progression and growth of that speaker from speech to speech shows that you've listened in the past, and it really shows that you know your audience. And you need to keep it focused on the person. Always talk in terms of I, not we. I heard, I perceived, I was moved when you said, rather than talking in terms of we as a club. Remember, you're doing a personal evaluation of the person that you're standing in front of. On to that second P, the positive part. Every facet of your evaluation needs to be positive. This really is the real cornerstone of the sandwich technique. Your language needs to motivate, not demotivate the person you're evaluating. And here's some tips that I've found to help keep my language positive. First and foremost, remove the word but from your vocabulary. It is the one word that short circuits more evaluations than any other word in the English language. And I even hear experienced Toastmasters use it quite often. Example, I liked the opening of your speech. It was really great. I was really interested in your story, but your conclusion was weak. Guess what? That speaker forgets everything before the but and just hears your conclusion was weak. Instead, say something like, you captured my interest with your story, and your conclusion would have been stronger if you had done A, B, or C. Likewise, strike the word not from your evaluations. It's such as, I didn't like, or I couldn't follow when you said, rather than something like, it would have been easier to follow if you had said so-and-so, or I would have liked it better if you had said something about. Do you know it's hard to be positive when using the English language? I did some research for a presentation I did on attitude for another group recently, and found that there are 558 words in the English language that define, that speak to attitude. You know that only 38% of them are positive. Obviously, the rest of them are negative. So you have to watch the words that you use when you're evaluating somebody. And the third piece, proactive. Wikipedia defines proactive as being anticipatory, being change-oriented, and seeking to make things happen. In the evaluations that we do, we need to evaluate speakers using proactive, positive, and specific suggestions to make them better presenters. The key so often missed is being specific. A couple of examples, speech organization. Saying your speech would have flowed better with better organization of your main points really doesn't give you anything as the speaker. But instead, say something like, your speech would have flowed better if how to frost the cake had followed how to make the frosting, or if you had provided more detail about making the batter. Delivery's another. Rather than saying to the speaker, you know, you could have used the speaking space a little more effective to present your ideas, rather say something like, you know, if you stood here while you were making your first point and over here while you were making the second point, and so on, gives that speaker some real specific suggestions that they can take to that next speech. And finally, content. Next time, describe your vacation giving me vivid word pictures, describing colors and sounds, taking me to all the places that you went to, rather than just saying, geez, next time would you describe your vacation with greater detail? So those are just a few brief examples of how we can use and provide specific examples to help people grow when they give their next speech. Now a quick word about the duty of a good evaluator, something I shared with that VP of training whose story I talked about at the very beginning. As an evaluator, you have the ability and the power to be either a strong motivator or a demotivator of the person you're evaluating. So the role of speech evaluator is really not something to be taken lightly. How you present the information to that speaker can have a lasting effect So be aware of that and pick your words carefully. Now take that 3P concept of personal, positive, and proactive and wrap it up into that Toastmaster sandwich that starts with that positive feedback. How did the speaker accomplish the goals of that module? List areas where improvements can be made and cite 1 or 2 areas for better speaking and provide solid, specific examples that they can take to the next presentation. Do all that, and you'll have a tasty sandwich with all the fixings served up in ample quantities. Mr. Toastmaster?
Thank you, Bob. Very good. I don't think I'll look at another sandwich the same way in the future.